Hey, good morning again, everybody. Here we are, Thursday morning. We get another chance to get our day off on the right foot. This morning, I'm looking at a statement that Paul makes about widows and the church taking care of widows. And there's requirements for that. And one of those requirements, really just kind of in a nutshell, is that she got to be godly. And he makes a statement within this context I think is very applicable for all of us. In 1 Timothy chapter 5, and specifically verse 6. Paul makes this short statement, but how profound that this statement is. 1 Timothy 5 and in verse 6. But she who lives in pleasure is dead while she lives. Think about that. All right, now here he is talking about the church helping a Christian widow woman. She meets the parameters they have set forth within this context. So he's talking about a Christian. And so he says about this Christian widow, and I believe this will be true, we're going to look at another passage here that just confirms this, is that if a Christian lives in wanton pleasure, they're dead. Dead spiritually. We may claim to be a Christian. We may shout it from the rooftops. Right? We may be in a lot of verbal senses, putting that forth, but it's not what comes out of our mouth. It may not even be what's necessarily in our heart. It's going to be what's our actions. Paul says she who lives in pleasure, which simply means she's living for herself. She's living the things that's pleasing to her that are not in line with the lifestyle, the character of a Christian. He says she's dead. She's spiritually dead while she lives physically. We can fall into that same trap. We may think we're going to heaven. Look at the 5 foolish virgins. They were expecting, but they missed out. And so, number of illustrations that could be used along those lines. But notice what Paul's saying. Here's a Christian woman. She's living for self. She's not living for God. She's not living by the guidance or the guidelines of God's word. She's a Christian in name only. She's a believer in name only. But her actions have her dead spiritually. She is professing to be alive, but her actions have her dead spiritually. Paul makes something over in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 along these same lines. Paul makes this statement in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verses let me see here. Hit the wrong chapter here. Let me get here. 2 Corinthians, okay, there we go. Chapter 5 verses 14 and 15. Paul says this, "For the love of Christ compels us, because we judge thus, that if one died for all, then all died. And he died for all, that those who live should live no longer for themselves, but for him who died for them and rose again." Think about this, the application of this. All right, so if we profess to be a believer, then each day our life should be living about God. We don't live to go to the lake on Sunday morning. We don't live to sleep in on Sunday morning. We don't live, to go motorcycle riding, when the saints are assembling. We don't live our lives for us. We may profess, but what's our action saying? We may profess that we're living for Christ, but our actions are showing we're really living for self. And then what did Paul say over in 1 Timothy 5? We're dead while we live. Isn't it interesting of how the Bible always comes back to our actions? What's our actions say? Doesn't matter what comes out of our mouth. Doesn't matter what we feel. What's our actions say? Are we truly living for what we profess to be? Well, here's Paul's teaching us this point. If we're not, we may feel that we're all kinds of things, but in reality, we're still just as lost as what we were before we obeyed the gospel. We're just as lost as what we were before we got saved. We are just as lost. If our life is about our pleasures, our time is about us, and it's not about God, it's not about Christ who died for us, we're still lost. It doesn't make any difference what we feel or what we say. As Paul says, she's dead while she lives. I'm going to leave you with that because there's a lot to chew on right there. I want you to think about these things. And so we're going to leave you with that, and there's your dose of God's Word today. And hopefully we'll get back tomorrow. Lord willing, we'll get back tomorrow. We'll get us another dose of God's Word. And until then, I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you in the morning.